Welcome back, guys. In today's episode, I'm sharing 8 true disturbing stories about creepy encounters in the Appalachian wilderness. One man on a solo work trip wakes up to footsteps circling his tent. No voices, no lights, just pacing. Another returns to his remote cabin to find the porch light dead, the door cracked open, and his dog refusing to come back inside. So make sure to hit that like and subscribe button, share this with your friends, and let me know where you're watching from. Thanks. Now let's get into it. In September, I took on a job that brought me into a remote area outside Darnell Ridge, a place buried deep in the woods with no nearby homes, no trails, no cell signal. I parked my truck at the end of a gravel path that looked more like runoff than a road, and hiked about half a mile in. I set up camp near a narrow creek. The ground there was flat enough, no signs of recent animal activity. Everything felt quiet, normal. I started work on the southern edge. Most of the land was sloped, dense with oaks and brush. The only thing that stood out was a rusted axe head buried halfway in the mud next to an old stump. The metal was flaked and split. I kicked some dirt off it, took a photo, and moved on. That night, sometime after 2, I woke up. I didn't hear it all at once, just a faint shift in the leaves outside the tent. Then another. Footsteps. Not fast, not cautious, just moving. They circled. I didn't move. I listened. Whoever it was didn't speak, didn't breathe loudly, just kept walking in a wide arc around the tent. Then the steps moved off into the woods. I waited another minute, maybe 2. I didn't unzip the flap. I pulled my hatchet closer and stayed still until I drifted back off. The next morning, I headed north. The terrain there was harder to move through. Brambles, uneven rock, thorned vines. I climbed halfway up a ridge when I saw the first stone pile. It wasn't large, maybe 2 feet tall, wider than it was high, covered in moss, but the rocks were arranged deliberately. It wasn't a trail marker. It wasn't shaped like one. No tag, no stake. I crouched next to it. The moss wasn't fresh. I scraped a small patch and found a white stone under it, smooth and worn. I took a photo and logged it on my GPS. A few minutes later, the GPS froze. The display glitched, flashing and shifting my location in a slow spin. Battery full. Nothing around that should have caused interference. I restarted it. Still the same. I turned around and headed back the way I came, using tree shapes and ground dips to guide me. I had orange tape tied on certain branches. I looked for the crooked tree I'd passed earlier. I found 3 that looked like it, but none in the right place. I reached my camp almost 2 hours later. The tent flap was unzipped. The cooler I'd locked before leaving was open. Nothing missing, nothing eaten. The food sat there untouched. I checked the tent. No damage, no dirt or footprints. Just open zippers. I sat on the cooler and stayed there until sundown. I didn't cook. I didn't go back into the tent until it was too dark to sit outside. That night, the steps returned. They started the same way, far off, crunching slowly, circling. They stopped. Then I heard one more step, closer than any before. I kept my hand on the hatchet and didn't blink. I stared at the wall of the tent, listening. Nothing moved for 10 minutes. Then silence. I didn't sleep again. Next morning, I worked the lower quadrant. I stayed within a short distance of camp. I wasn't interested in climbing again. I moved down the hill and found the second stone pile around midday. Same size, same moss, but this one had a broken piece of wood beside it, weathered, soft, laid against the base of the stones. 8 straight vertical cuts marked across it, deep and clean, as if carved by a chisel or knife. They weren't symbols. They weren't numbers, just marks. The woods around me had gone still. I paused and listened. No birds, no water, no wind in the leaves. I waited a moment, then checked the GPS again. still non-functional. I looked at the position of the sun and marked the general direction of the pile with my compass. I headed back and packed up. I didn't stop to eat. I folded the tent fast, shoved everything into my pack, strapped the cooler, and left. About 20 minutes down the slope, I heard the whistle. 2 notes, both low, slightly off pitch. I stopped and looked behind me. Nothing. I moved faster, not running, just longer strides. It came again, same 2 notes, louder this time. I didn't look again, just kept moving, hatchet in my right hand. And minutes later, I expected to hit the gravel road. Nothing, just more trees. I turned, went back the way I came, checking landmarks. Saw a broken limb I recognized. Then another. I stepped into a clearing and saw a 3rd stone pile. It sat directly in the middle of the trail. Same size, same moss. This one had 2 pieces of clean wood next to it. Not broken, not old. Fresh planks, bright surface, no rot. 9 vertical slashes cut between them. 4 on one, 5 on the other. The last one I'd seen had 8. I stepped back. My foot hit a root and I nearly slipped. I steadied myself and backed out of the clearing. I didn't follow the trail anymore. I moved through brush, ignoring the path. Branches snapped underfoot. Thorns caught my sleeves. I pushed forward until I saw something reflect through the trees. The windshield of my truck caught a sliver of light. I ran the last stretch, hit the gravel without slowing. The truck was where I left it, nothing touched. I got in and started the engine. I didn't stop until I saw gas station lights an hour out. They tried to contact me after. I deleted every message. I was 26 the year I decided I needed to get away. Not like a weekend camping trip kind of getaway. I'm talking full-on unplugged from everything. No people, no contact kind of escape. I'd just come off a brutal breakup, the kind where every conversation turns into a post-mortem, and things with my family were pretty strained, not dramatic, just worn out. Everyone was tired of everyone else. So I rented this cabin in western North Carolina. You couldn't get there without trying. It was deep, the kind of place that didn't show up on GPS. To even find the turnoff, you had to follow these janky, hand-painted markers nailed to trees, old license plates, scraps of reflector tape. I remember driving that first day thinking, if I break down out here, no one's finding me. Not by accident. The cabin itself was bare bones. 2 rooms, tin roof that pinged whenever acorns hit it, and a shed that looked like it was one bad storm away from collapsing. No neighbors, no cell service, just a landline, satellite internet that barely worked, and a propane heater. It was perfect. Quiet in a way I hadn't felt in years. I worked remote tech support, which meant as long as I had enough connection to walk someone through restarting their router or updating firmware, I could keep the lights on. I brought in groceries once a week, kept a rotation of basic meals, rice, canned stuff, jerky. I wasn't there to live fancy. I wanted solitude. And for the first couple weeks, that's exactly what I got. I'd wake up, chop wood, answer a few tickets, maybe go for a walk near the property line. There were bears in the area and the occasional bobcat, but I kept a rifle close by and didn't wander far. I got used to the silence quicker than I thought I would. It didn't feel creepy at first, it felt earned, but then October rolled in. The first weird thing happened on a Thursday. I remember it clearly because I'd just gotten off a support call with this guy in Oregon who couldn't stop yelling about his modem lights. After I hung up, the landline gave this sharp pop, like someone flicked the speaker with a finger and then just went dead. Total silence. No dial tone. I figured, fine, I'll fix it tomorrow. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped outside to get some air. No moon that night, just stars, sharp and clear. I was mostly watching where I stepped. Snakes had been curling up under the porch lately, using the house's heat to stay warm. I swept the flashlight across the porch, then out toward the trees. The fence I'd rigged with barbed wire marked the edge of what I considered my space. That's when I saw something shift near the tree line. At first, I assumed it was a deer. There were tons around. But this thing stood tall, like upright tall. not hunched over, definitely not a bear. I raised the flashlight, but it moved behind one of the bigger pines before I could catch its shape. What I did see, though, were its eyes. You know how animal eyes reflect light? These did that, but they didn't blink, just stared. I didn't shout, I just said, "Hey," kind of loud, enough that anyone lurking out there would know I wasn't asleep, wasn't clueless. Still no movement. The eyes didn't even flinch. I backed up slowly into the cabin, locked the door behind me, and pulled the curtain tight. I wasn't convinced it was a person. People don't stand that still. They fidget, they make noise. Whatever this was, it didn't act like anything I knew. I grabbed my hunting knife and set it beside the bed, just in case. I tried to unwind with some old sitcom episodes I'd downloaded, but I couldn't stop picturing those eyes, still locked on the porch, like they were waiting for me to come back out. At 1:14 a.m., I woke up. Not like I stirred or rolled over. I woke up, fully alert, because something was walking on the gravel outside. Crunch, crunch, slow steps. Measured, held my breath, listening. The porch light hadn't gone off. That was weird, because it was hypersensitive. It had lit up once, for a damn raccoon. Crunch, closer now. Then I heard this tap on the front window. Just one. Not a knock. Not a thump. It was delicate, like a fingernail on glass. I got out of bed, moved slow down the hall, hugging the wall in the dark. Moonlight gave me just enough visibility to see the furniture outlines. I stayed low and peeked through the corner of the curtain. Nothing. Then, clear as day, I heard my own voice from outside. "Hey Chris, come on out." I froze. It wasn't similar. It was me. Same rhythm, same tone. But something was wrong with it. It was too clean, like someone had flattened all the human parts in post-production. The warmth, the imperfection, gone. "Chris," it said again, deeper now, right outside the door. "I know you're watching." The doorknob rattled, not like it was being forced, just a lazy jiggle, like someone was idly toying with it. I didn't move, didn't breathe. I stood there for 5 solid minutes until everything stopped. No footsteps, no voice, just the fridge humming and my own pulse in my ears. When the sun came up, I checked the porch. No footprints. Just the usual scatter of leaves and dust. But the doorknob had a smear on it. Dark, greasy, and a little red around the edges, like someone had dipped a finger in oil and dragged it across. I didn't touch it. I stayed inside all day. Around noon, I radioed the ranger station, told them I'd seen some movement near my property line, maybe off-trail campers. The guy on the other end didn't sound surprised. But then he paused and asked, "You seen anything weird?" I lied. Nope. That night, I kept the lights off, sat in the living room with my rifle pointed at the window. Flashlight was on the table, batteries fresh. At 2:14 a.m., I heard the scream. Started like a bobcat, sharp, shrill, but then it shifted, got higher, thinner. It wasn't an animal, it was trying to sound like one. Then, mid-scream, it just stopped. Like someone hit pause. No echo, no fade. Then came the footsteps. Slow, deliberate ones. The porch creaked under their weight, and then I saw it. It stepped into view like it had been waiting for the moonlight. Same height as me, same shirt I'd worn earlier, even had the same tear in the sleeve. But the arms were too long, elbows bent a little wrong, like someone trying to draw a person from memory and getting the joints off. Its face was mine, but warped, skin pulled too tight, smile stretched just a bit too wide. The eyes didn't reflect anything, just black pits. It crouched, bones bending at weird angles, and pressed its face to the glass. I didn't move. My finger was on the trigger. I don't know why I didn't fire. It blinked. One long, exaggerated blink. And then it was gone. No sound, no retreating steps, just vanished. I stayed like that till morning. Once there was enough daylight, I stuffed whatever I could grab into a duffel bag, got in my truck and drove straight to town. Left the rest behind. Tools, laptop, clothes. Didn't care. At a diner near Bryson City, I told a waitress I thought someone might have been watching me at the cabin. She didn't even blink, just called over this older guy sitting by the window. Faded camo jacket, gray beard. He slid into my booth like it was routine. "You hear it call your name?" he asked before I said anything. I nodded. "They do that," he said. "It's not about tricking you. They want to see how close they can get." I asked him, "What are they?" He looked me dead in the eye. "Not my place to explain, but don't say your name out loud, especially not at night." I didn't go back for weeks. When I finally did, during daylight, everything inside was exactly where I'd left it, except the mirror in the bedroom. It had been unhooked from the wall and turned to face the corner. I packed up everything I had left and was out of there before sunset. Now I live in Tennessee, got a trailer on a street with actual people, dogs on both sides, motion lights everywhere. I was 22 when I got hired to do trail maintenance in the Appalachians. Not the kind of job people dream about, but honestly, it sounded like a decent way to spend a few months. I'd grown up a couple towns over, spent a lot of time in those woods as a kid. When the Parks Department offered me a seasonal spot, it felt like a win. Paid work outdoors, away from traffic and noise, just swinging a machete and touching up trail markers. Nothing I couldn't handle. They assigned me to a place called Trail 19. You won't find it on any hiking app. It's way out there, barely open to the public, which I thought was a plus at the time. No weekend crowds, no selfie sticks. Just a cabin for check-ins, a beat-up map with faded ink, and an old two-way radio that worked about half the time. I was supposed to call in twice a day. Once when I started, once before sundown. That was it. The first couple of days went just like you'd expect. Wake up with the sun, eat something barely edible, grab my gear, and hit the trail. I had a routine almost immediately. Clear fallen branches, repaint faded mileposts, fix any signs that were leaning or cracked. I'd work my way up the trail and back down, swing after swing through the underbrush, taking long, steady breaths. The sun would cut through the trees just enough to light the path without roasting me. It was quiet, peaceful even, just me and the forest. Day 4, though, that's when things shifted. I was deeper in the trail than usual, maybe 2 miles past where the path officially ended on the map. This part wasn't supposed to be accessible, but I was told to clear as much as I could find, so I kept pushing forward. The brush was ridiculous. Thick enough that every swing of my machete felt like I was digging through rope. It slowed me down, but I kept going. That's when I noticed something in the weeds off to my left. Just a thin piece of wood poking up through the ground, maybe a foot tall. I figured it was trash at first, like an old survey marker someone forgot to pull. I walked over, yanked it out, and brushed off the moss. The word Barker was carved into it. The letters were shallow and crooked, like whoever did it had a dull blade or unsteady hands. It didn't look official, no paint, no label, just that one word, carved right into the stake. It threw me off. There wasn't supposed to be anything named out here. No camps, no cabins. I took a photo and jotted the coordinates down in my logbook. Figured I'd ask about it later. I kept walking. After a while, I noticed the forest had gone dead quiet, like fully silent. No birds, no squirrels, even the insects had stopped. It was the kind of quiet that makes your ears ring a little. I actually stepped on a dry leaf just to make some noise. It cracked under my boot, sharp and brittle. And then, nothing again. It was unsettling, but I told myself maybe it was just a lull. I pushed on. A little while later, I came to this clearing that definitely wasn't on the map. Small, maybe 10 feet across, but right in the middle of it was a jar. An old mason jar, cloudy from the inside, like it had been sealed a long time ago. It was sitting perfectly centered, like someone placed it there on purpose. I got closer. Inside it looked like there were dark clumps, maybe dried plants, bits of moss. It was hard to tell. There was a loop of rusted wire wrapped around the lid, tight, like a seal. I crouched down, thinking maybe it was part of some trail marker or experiment, but it didn't feel right. I reached out, but stopped just short of touching it. Something about it made me hesitate. I don't know what exactly. I tried the radio, just static. I took a picture and moved on. I wasn't going to mess with it. About 100 yards later, I found another jar. This one was half buried under some ferns, just barely visible. I pulled it out and held it up. It had a small glass marble in it, those old swirly kinds kids used to play with, and something else, something that looked like teeth, tiny, brownish, and uneven. I wanted to think they were animal teeth, but they looked too human. I felt this pressure in my chest, like my body wanted to breathe faster than I was letting it. I lowered the jar and looked around. That's when I saw the marks. On the nearest tree, just above eye level, were these thin, clean slashes. 4 of them, perfectly parallel, not from an animal, too neat, too precise. I turned to look back toward the clearing. There were 3 jars now, not 1, not 2, 3. Sitting there in a neat little triangle like they'd always been there. The new one, because it was definitely new, was filled to the top with packed gray ash. No label, no lid markings, just ash. Like someone had scooped the inside of a fireplace and pressed it down with their bare hand. That was the moment my stomach dropped. It wasn't just the jars. The trees felt closer. The trail behind me didn't look like the one I'd just walked. I tried the radio again, still just static. I spun in a slow circle, looking for anything human. Another worker, a hiker, a sound. Nothing. Just those same silent trees. I started walking back. I needed to get out, just retrace my steps and get back to the cabin, but nothing matched. Trees I'd passed looked different. Paths I thought I'd cleared were suddenly overgrown. I saw the same dead tree 3 times, even though I never looped back. I stopped and pulled out my knife, carving small X's into the trees as I went. Every few hundred feet, another X. I figured I'd at least be able to tell if I was going in circles. I was. The same X showed up 3 times. I was marking the same tree over and over. I felt this rising heat in my head, like my brain was trying to reject what I was seeing. I yanked my compass out of my pack. The needle spun like a fan. No direction, no stability. I snapped it shut, jammed it back in my bag, and took off running. At first, it was just the sound of my own boots hitting the trail, but then I heard it. Cracks behind me. Not random, rhythmic. One branch, then another, not falling, breaking. Like footsteps. I turned fast, holding my machete out in front of me. Nothing there, just forest. But in the corner of my eye, I caught something shift. Low to the ground, moving between 2 trees. Too fast to be a person, but too big to be anything else. I turned again. 5 feet behind me, a new jar. Fresh, still wet with condensation. Inside was a rolled-up strip of paper. I didn't touch it with my hands. I used the machete tip to pull it out. Unrolled it on the ground. 3 words written in pencil. Do not speak. I stood there, hunched over that paper, heart hammering so loud I could barely think. Then I ran. No idea where I was going. I just ran. Branches whipped my face. Underbrush tore at my legs. My lungs started burning. But I didn't stop. I didn't look back. The forest felt like it was bending around me. Trees shifting, trails redirecting. Every step forward somehow pulled me sideways. But then I saw it. Through a gap in the trees, just barely visible, the edge of the ranger cabin's roof. That little silver propane tank next to it. I almost didn't believe it was real. I sprinted toward it, didn't even check behind me, got to the porch, kicked the door in, and locked it behind me. Every bolt, every latch collapsed to the floor, couldn't catch my breath. Eventually, I made it to the radio. Trail 19, I said, my voice cracking. Unusual hazards, requesting extraction. It took a second, then a voice crackled back. Trail 19? Say again? I told them everything. The jars, the fork in the trail, the compass, the X's. They told me to stay put. I did. I didn't sleep. I sat there all night, machete in hand, ears tuned to every creak and pop outside that cabin. Next morning, a supervisor and 2 rangers showed up. They looked exhausted. We walked back out together. We followed the X's. Got to the clearing. It was empty. No jars, no fork, no slash marks on the bark, just forest, plain and quiet. His compass worked perfectly. I told them again what I saw. One of the rangers took notes. The supervisor didn't say much, just looked around, then nodded and said, Trail 19 is closed for maintenance. That was all. They reassigned me that afternoon. Different area, less remote. I didn't argue. On my last morning, I stepped outside the new cabin. It was early, cold. I sat on the steps, sipping coffee, trying not to think about it. That's when I saw the jar, right there on the step. Clean, sealed. Inside was a strip of tree bark, carved into it. One word. Wyatt. I took a picture, left it right where it was, got in my truck and drove. I still dream about that fork, about paths that change while I'm walking them. Sometimes I wonder if I ever really left that trail, or if part of me still stuck out there, spinning in circles. I grew up just outside a small town called Wayland, maybe half an hour from Asheville. It's the kind of place where everyone knows each other's dog's name but still pretends not to see you in the grocery store. There were woods everywhere, not deep wilderness, but enough trees that every backyard led somewhere you probably shouldn't be after dark. Almost every family had some weird story, something they'd swear happened to their uncle, or their neighbor's cousin, or that one guy who moved away real suddenly and didn't leave a note. My Uncle Mike had more of those stories than anyone. He wasn't the crazy kind, not exactly. He worked construction, had calluses on his hands, paid his taxes. But he'd say stuff, mostly when he was 2 beers in and just mellow enough to let the filter drop, like, you ever hear footsteps that ain't yours, just keep walking. Don't stop, don't talk, and don't look curious. Or, there's things in the ridges that remember faces. Some come back from a walk different. I always thought he was just being dramatic. I mean, it sounded like the kind of thing you'd say to make camping trips more interesting. But that stuff stuck with me anyway. I've always liked hiking. Still do, but I'm a lot pickier now. Back then it was my escape. I was working part-time at a gas station that reeked of burnt oil and beef jerky, taking classes at the community college where half the professors acted like you were a burden for showing up. I didn't have much going on socially, and honestly, I liked it that way. Just give me a trail, some peace, and a water bottle, and I was good. That day, I decided to go out to this trail we used to call Hemlock Ridge. Not a real name, just what me and Jake, my old hiking buddy, called it because of this moldy wooden sign nailed to a half-rotten post that said Hemlock. You'd miss it if you didn't know it was there. It was tucked off this gravel road past an old storage facility that hadn't had tenants in years. We'd been there once before, me and Jake, maybe 8 months earlier. There'd been a rock slide a ways in, so we turned back. Nothing strange happened, but I remembered how empty it felt out there. Like the woods were deeper than they looked. That's what I wanted, a break from the noise. I got there around 5 in the afternoon. Still light out, though shadows were starting to stretch. I packed light, water bottle, flashlight, folding knife, and my phone. No earbuds. I liked hearing the trail. It was part of the experience. The first part's just narrow dirt, winding upward through tight switchbacks. It's not steep, but it's enough to warm up your calves. I made good time. I wasn't really watching the clock, just enjoying the rhythm of walking alone. Then, all at once, the sound cut out. I didn't notice it fading, it was just gone. No wind, no bugs, no birds, nothing. I stopped. Thought maybe it was my ears playing tricks on me, like when you go underwater and things feel muffled. I clicked my tongue just to hear something, Nothing echoed, not even a flutter from the trees. It felt like I'd walked into a box that had been sealed shut. I stood there a minute, turning in a slow circle. Trees were packed close, shadows between them looked thick enough to touch. My skin prickled. Not like fear exactly, just wrongness, like when you walk into a room and forget why, and suddenly feel like you shouldn't be there. I told myself it was fine, that sometimes the woods go quiet. Maybe something spooked the animals, a bobcat nearby, maybe. I took a breath, told myself to keep moving. Then I saw it. It was just around the next bend, maybe 10-15 feet ahead. Something crouched low in the middle of the trail. At first I thought it was a stump, something lumpy and weird-shaped. But it didn't match anything else on the trail. The shape was wrong. Not quite round, not quite square. Just off. Then it shifted, turned its head. It stood up. It was shorter than me, maybe 5 feet, maybe less. No hair, no clothes. Its skin wasn't white, but this dull, grayish color, like clay or candle wax that had been handled too much. It looked soft and wrong, like it wasn't supposed to be outside. Its arms were long and the fingers, God, the fingers, looked like someone had pulled them too far, then let them droop. The skin hung a little loose, like it didn't fit right. But the eyes were the worst. Big, round, almost the size of lemons. No whites, no pupils, just this cloudy, glossy surface like headlights behind fogged-up glass. They didn't blink, didn't shift, just stared straight at me like it was trying to recognize something. I couldn't move. My hands were still hanging by my sides, useless. My knees felt like they wanted to bend the wrong way. It was just looking at me. Head tilted a little. Its mouth was open, not wide, just barely parted, and inside were these tiny gray teeth. Round, perfectly smooth, like stones, not teeth. Then it moved, not fast, but sharp, a twitchy sort of adjustment, like it was getting ready for something. It crouched low, tilted its head further, hands almost touching the dirt now, still staring. I stepped back once, then again. I didn't turn around, and then I tripped. My foot hit a patch of loose ground. I went backward, hard, landed on my elbow and felt something pop. Pain spiked up my arm, sharp and hot. I gasped, louder than I meant to. Leaves stuck to my palms as I pushed myself up, heart punching my ribs. I looked back down the trail. It was gone. Nothing there. Not a sound, not a shift in the leaves. Just empty trail. I didn't stop to think. I started walking. Fast, but not running. Running felt like it would make things worse. I kept glancing to my left and right over my shoulder. Never saw anything. But I could feel it. I know how that sounds, but I'm telling you, there was something there, like it was matching my pace. Not right behind me, not in the trees exactly, just close enough. I didn't breathe right until I saw the car. I got in and locked the door so fast I nearly dropped my keys. I sat there, shaking, hands glued to the wheel. My elbow throbbed, but I didn't care. I was staring at the mirror, nothing in the rear view. Then I checked the side mirror. There it was, right at the edge of the trees, standing just where the trail met the tree line. Same shape. Same two big eyes. They caught the last bit of light, just barely glowing, like coins on a carpet. He'd still not blinking, still watching. I don't think I exhaled until the tires were crunching gravel. I reversed so hard I fishtailed a little, then floored it down the road. Didn't stop until I was back on pavement. I didn't tell anyone, not right away. What would I even say? A couple weeks later, Uncle Mike came by. We were sitting on the porch and he said, kinda offhand, "Some nights I think I see those moon-eyed bastards out there again." I looked at him. "What are moon-eyed?" He squinted at the woods for a second. Then he shrugged. "Not people. Been around too long for that. They hate light. Watch more than they walk. You ever see one?" I just shook my head. He didn't ask again. I still have the GPS pin saved. Sometimes I open the map and zoom in on that blank green patch where the trail starts. Still no name, no reviews, no photos, just forest. And if I ever see eyes like that again, I don't think I'll get a second chance. When my cousin Jake hit me up about this cabin he'd inherited way out in the hills of eastern Kentucky, belonged to our Uncle Kenny, who'd passed the year before. It wasn't the kind of cabin you rent for a cozy weekend. No Wi-Fi, no heat, no charm, just a one-story shack deep in the woods, surrounded by nothing but trees, silence, and a creeping sense that the place didn't really want visitors. Jake said he was fixing it up, but when I got there, it looked more like he'd been squatting in a haunted tool shed. The roof sagged, the porch was half-eaten by moss, and every window had at least one spider camped out full time. He'd cleared just enough space on the porch for a folding chair and a busted cooler full of beer. At the time, I was burnt out. I'd been working pest control for months. Crawl spaces, infestations, dealing with the kind of smells that cling to your skin even after you shower. Plus, my sleep was a mess. Most nights, I'd lie awake until 3 or 4, then drag myself through the next day in a fog. So the idea of unplugging for a weekend didn't sound too bad. No phone, no clients, just trees and maybe a night of actual sleep. I should have asked more questions. I showed up late Friday. GPS gave up before I was even close, so I had to rely on Jake's sketchy map he'd texted me. It was basically a line with a few squiggles labeled creek and weird tree. By the time I found the turnoff and followed the dirt road to the cabin, the sun was down and the trees were so thick it looked like I'd driven into a cave. Jake came out holding 2 beers, smiling like he'd been waiting for me all week. "Still smells like Uncle Kenny's cologne and regret," he joked, handing me a bottle. Inside, it was worse. The living room was a graveyard of old furniture, sagging couch, a wobbly coffee table, and shelves filled with dust-covered tools and antlers nailed directly into the walls. Everything smelled like old oil and wood that had soaked up 40 years of cigarette smoke. I dropped my bag in the smaller of 2 rooms and tried not to imagine what was crawling around under the bed. We sat up for a while talking. Jake had picked up work here and there, roofing jobs, driving deliveries. He liked the quiet, he said, the way the hills muffled everything. When he said quiet, though, there was something in his voice that didn't sit right. Like quiet wasn't always peaceful out there. Then, somewhere around his 3rd beer, he brought up the Watchers. "You heard of them?" he asked, like he was testing me. I assumed it was a joke. What, like forest ghosts? No, they're not ghosts, they're just there. He told me about these tall, thin shapes people swore they saw in the woods. Not creatures, not people, just outlines. Black silhouettes that stood perfectly still among the trees. They didn't run or make noise. They didn't even hide. They just stood and watched. He said you'd sometimes hear tapping at night. People would wake up and find fingerprints on their windshields or muddy handprints on their back doors. But the stories got real bad when people tried to engage with them, followed them into the woods, or even just stared too long. "If you ever see one," Jake said, looking dead serious, "don't break eye contact. Don't turn your back. Don't act like it's not there." I laughed it off, told him he was turning into a hillbilly conspiracy theorist. But something about the way he said it, it stuck. That night, I couldn't sleep. The couch springs in the guest room creaked every time I shifted. Around 1 a.m., I heard something. 3 light scratches behind the headboard, just barely audible. Then silence. Then again. 3 perfect, slow scrapes, like someone dragging fingernails over wood. I told myself it was an animal. Raccoons love climbing siding, but this was too measured, too intentional. I got up first thing and checked. No scratch marks, no branches near the window, no sign of anything. Jake said maybe I dreamt it. I didn't. Sunday, Jake drove into town to grab more beer and fill up his gas can. I stayed behind and decided to check out the dry creek bed he'd mentioned. I figured it'd be a short hike and I could shake the creepy feeling from the night before. Took my flashlight just in case. The trail was barely visible, overgrown and winding, and the deeper I went, the more the trees looked warped. Not dead, just bent weird, like they'd grown while leaning away from something. Halfway there, the flashlight flickered. Then it died. I hit it a few times. Nothing. And then I heard footsteps, slow, crunching dry leaves. Not behind me, off to the side. Like someone was pacing me through the trees. I stopped and scanned the woods. And that's when I saw it. Between two trees, maybe 30 feet out, was a figure. Tall, wrong in proportion. Its arms hung too low and its waist was almost pinched, like it had too many joints in the wrong places. It didn't have a face, just this smear of shadow where the head should have been. It wasn't moving, just standing, watching. I don't remember making the decision to run. I was just suddenly running. Twigs snapping underfoot, backpack slamming against my spine. I didn't stop until the cabin was in sight and I crashed through the front door, slamming it shut behind me. Jake came back 20 minutes later, saw me pacing with my shirt soaked in sweat. I told him everything. He didn't say much, just sat down and muttered, "You looked at it too long." That night we left all the lights on, even the little hallway lamp that flickered when you walked by. Around 2 a.m. they started going out, one at a time. Not like a fuse blew, more like someone or something was picking them off in sequence. Then the tapping started. 3 knocks on the front window. Pause. 3 on the side. Pause. 3 on the back. Jake and I hit the floor, crawling into the shadowy corner by the couch. He moved toward the front window and just stared. I whispered his name. He didn't respond. I crawled closer and peeked. There were handprints on the glass, not smeared like from rain, more like someone with wet tissue paper for skin had pressed their palms flat and dragged their fingers down. Then came the sound on the roof, a slow scrape. Not footsteps, not an animal, like something was pulling itself along, dragging across the shingles inch by inch. I wanted to leave, but I had nowhere to go. No phone signal, no neighbors, just miles of woods. We didn't sleep. When daylight finally came, we went outside. Every window was covered in handprints. No footprints, no trails, just silence. I packed my bag. Jake didn't stop me. He watched me load my stuff, then said, "If it shows up again, don't run. Don't blink. Don't pretend it's not real." I didn't know what that meant, but I nodded. The drive back to the city felt like something was behind me the whole way. I kept checking the rear view, glancing at every stretch of woods, expected something to step out. Nothing ever did. That night, I collapsed into my own bed, trying to convince myself I was fine. I'm 33. Right after my divorce, I ended up in a beat-up trailer down in an eastern Kentucky hollow. It was the only halfway decent place I could afford. No black mold creeping up the walls like the others. I figured I'd keep it for a while, get my head on straight before I thought about moving again. The trailer sits at the dead end of a gravel track. Real rural, barely maintained. You have to drive past this old gate with rusted letters that used to say something. Now it just leans off its hinge. Beyond it, nothing but dense woods that slope upward, blocking out daylight and swallowing sounds. My closest neighbor lived about a quarter-mile back toward the main road. I saw him maybe once or twice in the weeks I was there. I half expected him to be part of a conspiracy, just watching me through binoculars. But nope, just silence. It's the kind of place people forget is even on a map. And oddly, at first, that felt like exactly what I needed. Quiet. A chance to let the dust settle after everything fell apart. I worked nights at a sawmill about 20 minutes away. The shift ran until 2:45 a.m. By the time I rolled home, it was past 3. Each night, I'd park, and Rusty, my old mutt I'd had since college, would be there waiting at the porch. Tail wagging, tired eyes, but happy. I'd crack a beer, sit with him for a few minutes, and that was it. Just routine. And after a divorce, I thought routine might be the thing to hold me together. It was early September when things started feeling off. I swung down that gravel path and saw something wrong. The porch light was off. Habit made me check it first. I always left that thing on, didn't even think about it. It felt like safety. But there it was, dead dark. I pulled in, engine off, and heard Rusty inside, but he wasn't barking. He was growling, real low, just under his breath, steady. I'd never heard him do that. I got out, looked around, nothing obvious. But when I got to the porch, the screen door was cracked open. Not swung, just cracked, like someone emerged and left it hanging there. It didn't make sense. I stood there, keys in my hand, listening, and it was wrong. No tree creaks, no distant road noise, no insects. Just that single growl from Rusty. So I opened the door slowly. Rusty shot past me and bolted into the yard. He ran right to the edge of the woods, stopped, and just stared, tail still, ears pricked, no bark, nothing. He didn't chase, he didn't pounce. I crept inside and checked room by room. Bathroom, bedroom, even the closet, nothing. Lights everywhere. I tried to sit, but I didn't calm down until sunrise. Rusty didn't come back in until then. I watched him from the kitchen window. He sat at the tree line, rigid, like he was frozen, on point. I called him twice before he finally turned toward the trailer. His eyes were wide, not normal wide, like he'd seen something that didn't belong. Morning came. I replaced the bulb on the porch, nailed that screen door shut. Told myself I was imagining things. Maybe I forgot to fully close the door, maybe the wind, but there hadn't been any wind. I chalked it up to exhaustion. The next 3 nights came and went like clockwork. Quiet. Almost too quiet, like holding your breath underwater. I told myself everything was fine. Then Wednesday came around. I pulled in again after 3 a.m. and saw something dangling from the porch roof. At first I thought maybe a bird got stuck. But no, tiny bones, bleached white, strung together on fishing line, a creepy little wind chime clacking quietly. I crouched and cut it down with my pocket knife, then pitched it deep into the woods. Rusty hid under the kitchen table, shaking. When I tried coaxing him out, he wouldn't budge. I ended up sleeping on the couch next to him. Around 4:30, I heard tapping, gentle, deliberate, on the back window. Tap, 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 like someone using knuckles with purpose. I flipped off all lights and crept to the window, shotgun in hand. Out there was a figure, motionless, tall and too thin, no light, no movement. He just stood. Then I heard it, clicking. Too fast, too mechanical, like chattering teeth on amphetamines or a wooden puppet rattling its jaws. Heart pounding, I backed up and shut the blinds. I sat down, shotgun across my lap, and called the sheriff. They didn't show until dawn, but by then he was gone. Nothing to find, no footprints, no trash. Just the cold morning air. I pointed out the strange symbol etched into the aluminum siding under the window. An eye, stretched weird with lashes shooting out. The deputy said maybe some local teens messing around, devil worship stuff, and said he'd file a report. I didn't make it to the sawmill the next 2 nights. Stayed in, lights off, shotgun ready, Rusty at my feet, eyes darting. I barely slept. Then on night 3, something woke me. Heavy, slow footsteps on the porch. Not an animal, a human. It was dead quiet except for those steps. They stopped right outside the living room window. The motion light clicked on. I grabbed the shotgun and edged down the hall. Peering through the curtain, saw this man. He had to be 6'5" at least. Wore this tattered coat that looked like burlap or old canvas, fraying at the edges. His head was tilted to the side, like 90 degrees sideways, and stayed completely still. He didn't blink, didn't move, just stood, staring right at me. I shouted, "Get off my property!" Nothing, but his head tilted farther like it wasn't attached properly. Then he turned his body and walked off the porch. No rustling leaves, no cracking wood, just stepped into the woods and disappeared. I waited 10 minutes before I opened the porch door. Nothing. No footsteps, no collapsed leaves, just trees. Morning light brought another bone charm. This one right on the doormat, perfectly centered, bones arranged like a star. I took it outside, dropped it in the fire pit, set it ablaze, and watched it burn to ash. That night, I heard the clicking again, but this time from all around. Probably a dozen of those things circling the trailer. Then came scratching. At the windows, the walls, all at once. Rusty lost it, barking like his throat was going to tear. He barreled toward the front door, low growl, every hair on his back sticking straight up. I opened it, half expecting eyes in the dark. Instead, there was a circle of sticks laid out on the porch. Perfect. In the center, a fresh string of bones, like some twisted gift. Like, "Hey, I'm back." Then a whisper from the woods. Clear. Wrong. Not human, but words I could understand. "You brought him back." I fired the shotgun straight into the dark. Echoes bounced off the trees. Nothing returned. I slammed the door as if that sound could close the memory. Nailed it shut from the inside. Threw clothes and essentials into a duffel. Wallet, keys, leash for Rusty, and we left minutes before sunrise. We drove west for 3 hours straight to my cousin's place. I haven't gone back. Left the trailer door swinging open, lights still on. 2 days later, sheriff called. "Someone burned symbols into the grass around the trailer," he said. Same weird eye. Asked if I knew anyone who'd want to scare me. I didn't answer, because I don't think it was someone, it's something. My name's Darren. I was 23 when I landed this seasonal job doing trail maintenance out in a really remote part of the Appalachian Mountains. Not glamorous, I know, but it beat spending another summer behind the grill at that diner in Prescott. I just finished my degree in environmental science, and I figured a few months in the woods sounded like the right kind of experience. Add it to the resume, clear my head, maybe figure out what the hell I was doing with my life. 3 months. Fix signs, maintain trails, live out of a cabin. Easy enough. The cabin was way off the beaten path, like a full 20-minute drive up this sketchy gravel road that looked like it hadn't been repaired since Clinton was in office. I drove a little park-issued four-wheeler with a utility trailer. The road was full of ruts and switchbacks, and on the first day, I nearly flipped the thing trying to take a corner too fast. Learned quick after that. The cabin itself was functional. That's the nicest way to put it. A cot that felt like it was stuffed with old newspapers, a wood stove that smoked if you looked at it wrong, a propane burner, and this heavy metal desk that was literally bolted into the floor. No signal, no Wi-Fi, no TV. I didn't even get a radio station out there. Closest town was a blip on the map called Dalton Creek. 40 miles away and made up of a gas station, 2 churches, and a laundromat that only accepted quarters and prayers. At first, I didn't mind it. Waking up to nothing but trees and bird calls was kind of peaceful. The quiet took some getting used to, though. Like, real quiet. I didn't realize how much background noise we live with until all of it was gone. No hum of traffic, no people talking, no phones buzzing, just wind and leaves. The job was straightforward. Hike the trails, find busted or missing signs, replace them. Some were leaning, some had been eaten by termites, others were literally just gone, like someone had walked off with them. I'd dig up the old stumps, put in fresh posts, bolt on new signs. Most days I'd hit 2 or 3 depending on how far apart they were. I'd eat lunch on the trail, drink from my big metal canteen, and head back to the cabin by sundown. Easy rhythm, until I found signpost 14. That one was 6 miles out on a southern trail barely anyone used. I'd only gone that far because I was knocking out the more remote ones first. The first time I got there, the post wasn't leaning or rotted. It was just gone, laid out on the ground like a snapped tooth, split clean at the base, not chewed up, not worn, just broken, like someone had grabbed it and cracked it over their knee. I took a picture, logged the damage, then went back the next morning with a replacement. Dug a fresh hole, set it in nice and tight, double-checked everything. It looked good, stable. 2 days later, I swung by again on my loop, and it was broken again. Same spot. Same kind of break. No weather damage, no signs of claw marks or rot, just snapped clean through. I mentioned it to Ranger Maynard. He was the local guy assigned to that zone. Total lifer. Probably late 60s. Always wore the same faded ranger uniform and had a hunting knife on his belt that looked like it had seen actual combat. Maynard had this dry way of talking, like everything was a waste of his time, unless it involved firewood or bleeding. I asked if there were bears or something that could be knocking over signs. He didn't even look up from his clipboard, just said, "Leave it down." I laughed like he was joking. "Wait, seriously? You want me to leave a broken sign on the trail? It's been that way for a reason," he said. "Ain't your place to fix everything." I wanted to argue, but he had this way of saying things that made you feel like you just lost the conversation before it started. Still, I had a contract. I was told explicitly to replace every damaged sign. So I went back the next day and put in a new one. That night I couldn't sleep. Not because of guilt or anything, it was more like this unease I couldn't explain. I kept thinking about how still the air had gotten out there, like something had been holding its breath while I worked. I know that sounds weird, but it felt like the forest was waiting for me to leave. So I made a dumb decision. I decided to watch it. I loaded a thermos with coffee, grabbed a folding camp chair, and waited until after dark. Around 9, I took the four-wheeler out, parked it a good ways off from the trailhead so it wouldn't be seen, and hiked in. Took me about 45 minutes to get to the spot. I found a patch just off the path where the trees were thicker. Killed my light and sat down. No flashlight, no noise, just waiting. Midnight passed, then 1 a.m. I started to feel stupid. My legs were cramping, my coffee was cold. I was seriously about to call it when I heard it. Footsteps, not heavy stomps, just this slow, careful shifting of weight. Leaves crunching underfoot, one deliberate step at a time. It was coming straight down the trail. I froze. Whatever it was, it didn't hesitate. It walked right up to the signpost. And then I saw it. It was human-shaped, kind of, but wrong. Taller than any person I've ever seen, but hunched over, like its spine was fused at an angle. Its arms hung too low, elbows loose like marionette strings. It crouched down in this broken-looking way and, without effort, snapped the post again. Just bent and crack, like it was made of kindling. Then it stood, slowly. I heard a loud pop echo through the trees, something in its back shifting into place, and then it turned and looked right at me. There's no way it should have seen me. I was dead still, no light, but it looked at me like it had always known I was there. Its head tilted, slow and jerky, just the head. Then it took one step toward me. I bolted. I don't think I've ever run faster in my life. I hit the ridge, nearly ate it sliding down, rolled halfway and got up with a limp. My boot snagged on a root. I didn't stop. I made it to the four-wheeler, fumbled the ignition for way too long, then finally got it roaring. I gunned it back to the cabin like my life depended on it. Maybe it did. I slammed the door, locked it, dragged the desk in front of it. Then I just sat on the floor, gripping the hunting knife I kept for bears. I waited until sunrise. Didn't blink much. Next morning, I went back. No sign of the post. No broken wood. No chair, no thermos. The dirt where I'd been sitting was smooth, like something had swept it. One wide, flat spot in the middle, like someone or something had stood there all night. I didn't log it. I didn't tell anyone. That evening, Maynard showed up with a supply drop. He looked at me for maybe 2 seconds and said, "You saw it, didn't you?" I didn't respond. Didn't need to. He nodded. They ain't alive, he said. Not dead either, just old. Older than us. People around here call them the dry ones. Or the hollow. Don't bleed, don't speak. They just follow. Follow what? Whoever looks too long? Then he told me about the others. Campers who disappeared, hikers who never made it back. Empty tents with no blood, no struggle, just gone. He said, they don't like when you change the trail. But I didn't go down that path again. Didn't matter. 2 nights later, I woke up to 3 soft knocks. Not on the door, on the wall, right by my bed. I grabbed my flashlight, flipped it on, nothing. Just my coat hanging there. No scratches, no movement. Then I saw the window. There was a handprint, 5 long fingers, not smeared, just placed there, like it had stood for a while, watching. I slept with the lights on after that, every single night. The last week, I barely went outside, didn't fix a thing. I counted hours like I was waiting for a prison sentence to end. Then came the final night. The knocking returned, but this time, it moved. Around the cabin. 3 knocks. Pause. 3 more. Again and again. Every wall, a circle, like it was pacing, waiting. I held a fire poker and sat upright until dawn. When the sun rose, everything stopped. I packed my stuff in under 5 minutes, threw it in the truck, didn't even lock the cabin. I drove nonstop until I hit cell signal, 2 counties away. I haven't gone back. Don't plan to. My name's Caleb. I was 19 that summer when I took a job doing trail maintenance out in eastern Kentucky, around Red River Gorge. It wasn't one of those official park gigs, no uniform, no steady pay, just a handful of older guys who loved the woods so much they'd unofficially take on trails that the parks ignored. I heard about it through my cousin. I showed up with scuffed boots, a basic pack, and they handed me a machete and said, "Hope you don't mind getting sweaty." I didn't know what I was getting into. My day-to-day revolved around hiking old, mostly forgotten paths, slicing through thorny vines, fixing signs held together with duct tape, and rerouting sections that had washed away after heavy rain. The crew rotated each week. Most of them were in their 30s or 40s, seasoned, quiet, and experienced. I was the youngest, and I mostly stayed out of their way. Listening, learning, hauling logs. It was mid-July when they paired me with Vince. He was this quiet, gray-bearded guy, eyes sharp enough to slice through shadows. He wasn't unfriendly, but he wasn't chatty either. The first thing he told me, without a hint of a grin, was, "Don't wander off. Things in these hills don't like curious kids." I laughed it off, thinking he was teasing. He didn't crack a smile. Our assignment was Copper Ridge, one of those less-traveled trails, barely on any map. No stunning overlooks or arches, just dense, deep woods. It felt claustrophobic. Trees packed in like a crowd pushing you forward. We parked where the gravel stopped, slung on our packs, and started hiking. The trail was almost gone. In some spots, it looked like the forest was swallowing it whole. Branches interlacing overhead, sticky vines brushing my arms. Vince marched ahead in silence, each swing of his machete precise. 3 chops, step forward. I followed behind, pushing aside greenery, the sweat soaking my shirt and dripping down my neck. By late morning, the trail was barely recognizable, but we pressed on. The sun sat directly overhead, and the woods felt like a sauna. We reached a small, rocky creek and decided to rest. I collapsed onto a cool stone, peeled open my sandwich wrapper, and took a big bite. Vince stood maybe 10 feet away, just watching the trees. "You feel that?" he asked quietly. I paused, halfway through chewing. "Feel what?" He nodded toward the trees. "Listen." So I did. No bird song, no rustling leaves, just a kind of stillness, oppressive, sudden, like the forest held its breath. Vince dropped his sandwich, stepped on it with a heavy boot, grabbed his tools, and said, "1 more mile. Then we call it. Everything okay? I asked. He didn't answer right away. Finally, he said, just trust me. We started hiking again. Vince picked up speed, eyes flicking into the undergrowth. Behind us, I started hearing noises, like branches brushing together or small impacts. But whenever I looked back, nothing was there. Then Vince halted. He lifted his hand, silent. I stopped instantly. To the right, maybe 30 yards into the woods, something was standing. My first thought? Human, tall silhouette. But it wasn't right. Too thin. Arms hung low past its hips. No shift in posture, no blink, just frozen there, like it had been planted into the ground. What the hell is that? I whispered, voice tight. Don't move, Vince said. He didn't even glance at me. My pulse sped up. I blinked, and it felt closer. Not by much, but the forest felt smaller all around us. Still no sound, just that figure, unmoving, watching. Then it turned. Not with knees or feet, but straight from the waist, like a hinge in the spine. No weight shift, no steps, just a smooth, inhuman swivel. My throat felt raw, my feet felt glued. It grabbed my arm. His grip was hard. Back up. Slow. We did. Step by careful step, retreating on the trail. All I could do was stare at it. Couldn't see a face or eyes, but I felt it watching. Every time I blinked, I was sure it was closer. After maybe 10 steps, it turned again. Same hinge motion. Then it just slid back into the trees. No crunch of leaves, no twig snap. It vanished silently. Vince didn't say a word. He spun around and started walking fast, almost a jog. I followed, heart pounding, glancing over my shoulder at every branch, every shadow. We reached the creek again, and he stopped. Hands shaking, he pulled out a cigarette, lit it with a jagged inhale, and let the first drag tremble out. Saw it when I was 16, he said, voice low. Didn't think I'd ever see it again. I managed. What is it? He flicked ash into the water. No name. Locals call it the Ridge Walker, or just say, tall man. Best thing is not to look for it. That was it. Conversation died after that. We hiked back in silence. When we reached the truck, Vince told whoever asked that the day ended early because of the heat. Don't mention the woods. Don't mention what we saw. He paused, then added quietly, they'll laugh, or they'll poke around. I agreed. I nodded. I climbed in the truck, sweaty and shaken, and left Copper Ridge behind. The next week, I got stuck in a different part of the park, thank God. I never asked about Copper Ridge again. A few weeks later, someone said a couple hikers went missing in that area. One turned up barefoot, scratched, covered in bruises. He couldn't say much, just kept muttering, the tall thing. It didn't blink. Then Vince disappeared. One day, he just didn't show up. No note, no call. I asked the crew chief. He shook his head and said, Vince knew those hills too well. Sometimes that ain't safe. It's been 2 years now. I've visited Red River Gorge a few times since then, but I stick to the busy, beaten paths. The loops with signs every few feet. The ones with views and crowds. I was 31 when I took a contract job out in West Virginia. The assignment was simple, 3 months to digitize records from an old coal mining operation that shut down decades ago. I didn't ask too many questions. They were paying well, and after a rough couple of years in the city, I was honestly craving the quiet. They'd put me up in a cabin near a place called Ellis Creek, just a few miles from the mining site. It wasn't anything fancy. Small kitchen, 1 bedroom, a desk, electricity, running water, no internet, no signal. You had to drive uphill to get even 1 bar. For most people, that'd be a deal breaker. For me, it sounded like a reset. First thing I noticed was how still everything felt out there. Not peaceful exactly, just unmoving. The kind of stillness that makes your ears ring. It took me a couple days to adjust. I set up my workstation, scanner, laptop, boxes of ledgers all thick with dust and mildew. Everything smelled faintly like wet paper and rust. It was the kind of musty smell that clings to your skin. My evenings were slow, but I didn't mind. I had a stack of old paperbacks and a VCR with a crate of black and white tapes. Some classic horror, some just weird old local stuff. I'd flip a page, press play, rewind, repeat. Time blurred together. I didn't talk to anyone for days at a time, but after about 3 weeks, something shifted. At first, I chalked it up to animals. Raccoons rustling around the trash cans, maybe a bear sniffing the air for scraps. But then, I started hearing footsteps at night. Not scurrying, not padding, actual footsteps. Heavy, deliberate, human. The first time it happened, I was halfway through some 1,950 monster movie, bad effects, worse acting. I paused it when I heard crunching gravel just outside the cabin. Someone was walking around. Slowly, I muted the TV and held still. The footsteps circled the porch, moved past the window, paused, and then faded. I waited 5, maybe 10 minutes before getting up. I unlocked the door and stepped out with a flashlight. The beam cut through trees and underbrush, but nothing moved. No eyes reflected back, just thick, tangled woods. Next morning, sitting right in the middle of the porch, was a doll. It looked handmade. Twigs tied with twine, patches of moss stuck on for eyes. Its arms were too long, legs crooked. It wasn't cute or artistic, more like something made in a hurry or under stress. Primitive, wrong. I stared at it for a while, touched it with the edge of my boot. It felt freshly made, damp even. I ended up tossing it onto the fire pit out back and lighting it up. The twigs snapped and cracked as they burned. The moss hissed. I went back inside, trying not to overthink it. That day, I came across a new ledger thicker than the others, labeled June 1952, incident logs. Most of it was standard mining reports, equipment failures, payroll errors, but halfway through, the tone shifted. There were entries about missing workers, notes saying their helmets and gear had been found deep in the lower shafts, but no trace of the men. One report mentioned symbols scrawled under the shaft walls in chalk, unusual ones, not like anything used in mining operations. Then, I read, another damn doll at entrance, legs bent backward, tossed it down the slope. The entry named shaft 9B. I remembered seeing that name. There was an old map pinned to the cabin's kitchen wall, yellowed and curled at the corners. Shaft 9B was circled in red. That night, I shoved my desk against the front door, just in case. At around 2 in the morning, I was wide awake. I'd kept the lights off, just listening. Then I heard a soft sound. Barely audible over the buzzing silence, the back door rattled. Just once. Then a knock. Not a hard one, not banging. It was slow, almost polite. Like it wanted me to wake up gently. I didn't move. I lay in bed with my hand clenched around a hammer I'd pulled from the toolkit. I counted to 60, then 100. Nothing else happened. In the morning, the lock was still latched, but outside in the dirt, I saw prints, big ones, barefoot. The toes were wide and splayed, almost like claws. No shoes, no boots, just those strange, deliberate footprints leading up to the cabin and back into the woods. I drove into town later that day, bought a cheap trail cam at the hardware store, mounted it on a post by the front steps, angled perfectly toward the door. I felt better, safer, but by morning, the camera had been turned. Not knocked over, not stolen, just trotated. It now faced the trees. There was nothing on the card, not even movement. Whoever moved it didn't trip the sensor. Or maybe they just knew how to avoid it. After that, I got stricter with my routine. Work during daylight, drive up the ridge to check messages in the afternoon, lock everything by dusk. I kept a kitchen knife by the bed now. It wasn't sharp, but the weight of it made me feel less helpless. Then one morning, there was a second doll. This one was placed on the propane tank near the side of the cabin. It was smaller, no arms, just 2 stumps wrapped in red thread. the head tilted back, mouth a dark slit. It looked broken. I didn't touch it. I took photos and drove into town. Showed them to the woman working at the general store. She didn't react like I expected, just stared at the picture, then slowly asked, "You staying near Holler 9? I nodded. She crossed herself and said, "You shouldn't be there after dark." She told me Holler 9 was part of the land surrounding Shaft 9B. The area had been left alone for decades. Locals didn't hunt there. Hikers avoided it. Not because of bears or snakes, she said, because of things that don't leave prints. She didn't smile, didn't say it like a joke. That night I sat in bed, gripping the knife like a lifeline. Around 3 in the morning, I heard something beneath the floorboards. Soft thumps, then the sound of weight shifting slowly, like someone crawling on their elbows underneath the house. Then came the scraping, a metallic drag like nails across the inside of the heater vent. A slow quarter-inch pull, over and over, steady, intentional. I didn't wait to see what came next. I ran barefoot onto the porch, heart pounding so loud it drowned out the night. The forest was dark, silent, but halfway to the car my flashlight hit something. At the edge of the trees stood a figure, tall, thin limbs, head tilted, unmoving. The beam caught, its eyes, red, glassy, not reflecting like an animal's would, just glowing, like beads, like buttons sewn into skin. I didn't stop to look closer. I jumped in the car, started the engine, and kept my eyes on the rearview mirror the whole way out. Nothing chased me, nothing screamed. But I didn't stop driving until I reached a gas station an hour away. I slept in the car, left the headlights on. The wipers made little squeaks every time they passed over the condensation. I didn't move until daylight. When the sun came up, I drove back to the cabin to grab what I could. It was trashed. Drawer handles ripped off, chair legs cracked, cables tangled and torn. My scanner was open, half buried in dirt, and sitting on the scanner bed was another doll. Larger, more detailed, twine body, moss eyes, mouth sewn shut with thin wire. When I picked it up, it felt warm, like it had just been placed there. I didn't pack. I didn't lock the door. I drove straight to Charleston and emailed my resignation that night. I told them the equipment was ruined. No explanation beyond that. They paid me out. I never replied again. For a while, I tried to move on. Started freelance work, changed numbers, focused on forgetting. But 6 months later, I found a box in my mailbox, no return address, wrapped in brown paper, sealed tight. Inside were 3 dolls, each made of twine and moss, each with a wire-stitched mouth, each warm to the touch. I carried them inside, set them on the table, stared for a long time. That night, I locked every door and window, sat by the dolls, just watching them. I don't know why they were sent, I don't know what they want, but whatever was out there in that forest, it didn't stay behind.